appreciate that. Until we do what it says.
Start preparation.
And thus far, I'm over. It's metal. It should be brand. Cooktail's really hanging on that right door. Well, sue the
I came home, I had to go on nap. Well, I know it was too much good stuff.
That's not my jacket.
And I was wondering if you were purple.
So apparently we're gonna have a third middle table group now. You're welcome, Adam. You're gonna take the middle group since
Sure.
Greg and I don't want to have to talk to Greg.
Yeah, I think it is. We decided it's case
Right. I've been on all this time.
So just said sue the couples.
That's correct. Keep that for integrity. Disregard that that statement.
That statement was sarcasm.
One of the things interesting is there are symbols that are really popular that really kind of lost their popularity beginning till about 300 AD, and that's when the cross took over. So when's the last time you've seen an anchor in a church? Anyone seen one?
Yeah, but it was a special circumstance.
Okay. And we had the Christmas. If you look at our Christmas tree, they have those hands. I believe one of those is an anchor. So the story I think of this is one of my favorite stories is the wise man and the foolish man on the mount. It's how the Sermon on the Mount closes with those words. But in the Gospel of Luke, it is the end of him talking about who is a follower of his and not. And so this is the Luke version. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do tell you? I'll show you what someone who comes to me. Here's my on them. It has been well built. But the one who hears and does not act is like a man who built the ground without a foundation. The river burst, and great was the ruin of that house. So there's two main points to the statement, right? Point is that how should you build your house?
On a solid foundation.
On solid foundation. And what is he is building your house on a solid foundation in this story? Those who do my words. Which I find interesting because Christians often talk about belief and what we believe. Our beliefs are kind of what name us as Christians, and yet it is what we hear the words and believe them, right? But if you hear them and believe them and don't act on them, you are the foolish builder in the story. You're not the wise builder. And so it's important for us to remember that his goal is that the behaviors we have with what we claim we believe. And that's when we are the wise man. And then the other thing that I think is great about this story, now he says the river, in Luke he says the river will burst against it. In Matthew he says kind of that the rain will come down, blow. It's a little more dramatic effect. But in every case, it's an indication what eventually happens. Destruction. Storms are going to come, right? One of the most ancient sermons ever recorded was on this. Point. Storms in life doesn't have to be a physical storm, right? It can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be family troubles, it can be children troubles, it can be all sorts of things. Storms are going to come. The key is a strong foundation, right? That's what it really represents. The anchor represents having that strong foundation. Do John 11, 1-43, which is the raising of Lazarus. You have the longest story, by the way. And then Adam's group is going to do Luke 8, 40-56, which is the leader's daughter and the woman with the issue of blood. And they all have questions that you will discuss regarding those We're come back, greater group. I write mostly because you're visual. Right. Even never look at your notes again. It just helps it stick in your head. I'm online, people can't read. And my handwriting is awful, so it doesn't matter. But that's why I write more for me. So Jesus calms a storm. I'll let people from my group answers. What do you think this says about Christ as our anchor? My group had great.
Okay. Faith, he'll take care of you. Even when you have little faith, he'll take care of you.
So God is still faithful.
Right.
I thought that was Adam. I was going to yell at him.
I was dancing.
I feel like God's faithful response to us is based on our level of faith. You ever feel like that? And yet here's a story where the disciples clearly lack faith, right? So we're somewhat familiar with the story, but if you think about it, the storm comes, and what do the disciples start doing?
Freaking out.
Rowing, right? They don't freak out right away. They were on boats probably every day, but they probably felt like they could handle it, and they did. They tried at least. And it wasn't until they got to their last gasp straw, like now we're really in trouble. Now I'm panicking. Now I really not capable of solving this, that they go to Jesus, and they're not even nice about it, quite frankly. They say, do you not care? Yes. This is where he says, do you not even care that we're perishing? They're questioning the man's concern for them. They don't just say, help me. They say, do you not even care? What does Christ do? He helps. I'm thinking if I'm him, I'm walking on the water away from him, let the boat sink, and I can find 12 new guys, right? But no, that's not what he does. Even though they lack, which Christ points out to them, he still saves them. And so from an anchor standpoint, that reminder that when the storm is there, the anchor's still there, even when our faith isn't where it should be. That the disciples didn't have to have the right measure of faith, the right understanding of faith. They simply got saved by Christ. He's the one that said, you have faith, why do you doubt? But he still saved them. How about the John 11 group, raising Lazarus? What insight can you give?
Well, in this case, it was Martha and Mary. Lazarus, so they sent for Jesus, but Jesus just kind of he got there on his own time. And Martha said, if you would have been here a few days ago, Lazarus wouldn't have died. Jesus went on and then rose Lazarus from the dead. But I guess what it says about our faith and relating to the anchor is that Jesus got word that Lazarus was sick. He knew what he was going to do. He had the plan, and even though Martha and Mary didn't, he was going to do what he was going to do.
So we don't always understand what the big plan is, right? So in Mary and Martha's mind, we can assume her plan was, we know Jesus is a healer. He's healed people. I get him here while Lazarus is sick, and everything's good, right? But Jesus, I wrote ignores, although I don't really like that word there, because it's not that he ignored, he just, right? And not intentionally. Right. And not only does he put it off, in the story, he shows up 4 days after Lazarus had been buried, which is actually really substantial, because the Jews believe that your spirit remains within the body for 3 days. So if resurrected him on day 3, it'd be more like he simply revived the spirit. By waiting for that fourth day, he would have believed the spirit was gone. There's no hope. Day 4 is now are absolutely certain that the person is gone, and Jesus waits for them. And it does show that, specific words to his disciples is, This happens so people can know about God's presence, right? He says in Lazarus, this is very I didn't delay simply because I didn't want to be there. I delayed for God's purposes. God's purposes are eventually revealed. And so sometimes we have to acknowledge that we don't understand, right? Some might be outside of what we see and still trust bigger plan. That's the anchor point in that story, that we can still trust that God's plan is and better than what we might have thought was even possible. Luke 8, the leader's daughter and the woman with the issue of blood. I've always heard the issue of blood. I don't know what they say, modern language.
It just says that she's been bleeding 12 years.
Yeah.
So we pretty much understand.
So what's the anchor points here? None. Excellent. That's not correct though.
Oh, that's not correct.
Correct. Was your leader that bad?
We didn't.
No, his name's Adam Darren.
Oh,
Right,
he's
you're terrible.
sat there.
Well, somebody just said he was. Was that you?
Yeah.
That was horrible.
So the first story is the lady that had been bleeding for 12 years, and by her faith, she wanted to get this, but not be noticed. Right? She wanted to just come. Well, she said that she.
No.
Unclean?
So
Yes,
if you have the issue of blood, you're unclean.
Right.
So being in a crowd and not telling people that you were there violates Jewish law.
Correct.
So you can't just walk up to them and say, heal me, because you're violating Jewish law by being present in the place. So she wants to touch him, but she's quiet about it because she doesn't want people to know that she's breaking all their rules.
So she touches the hem of his garment, and from that touch, she's healed. But Jesus realizes it and questions me. And of course, the disciples are like, we're in a large
Big
group,
crowd.
mob here.
How do you know?
We'll never know who touched him. And he said, no, I felt the healing power leave me. Somebody touched me. That's when she told him it was I. Then while this is happening,
So wait a second. What's the?
it's her faith, believing that she can be healed.
So there's a real faith story here, right? And faith. But where she slips a little bit is she is afraid of social norms,
Correct.
right? So she does allow that to hinder her a little bit. And Christ, by Christ acknowledging her, by putting her into the limelight, that social norm.
It out.
Yeah, he's throwing it out. He's also humanizing her, right? Because can you imagine how dehumanizing it is if this person's unclean? You can't even go near them. If you had kids, you wouldn't be able to touch your kids. She, well, how many years? 12 years with no human contact, nobody hugging her,
The
nobody
sad thing
kissing her.
was, if she had leprosy, it would have been a physical that people could have seen. So the ostracization, she would have been cast out.
Yeah.
But because she was non-contagious and she wasn't seen and all of that, it was, forced to admit to being unclean all the time.
So I really like that humanizing aspect that Christ does. He could have just let her go, and it would have all just been quiet on the down low, right? But by bringing her in, he's restoring her humanity, not just her health, but her humanity as well. She's a full human being, just like everybody who is around her. Another story, actually, did I start you guys late? Because the woman with the issue of blood interrupts the story. Unless I started you late. Also started you late.
No, you started with the daughter. That was
Started
The daughter-
back to Jairus' daughter.
Because it starts with Jairus' daughter, really.
It does.
And then
it
it gets interrupted by
Correct.
this story.
right.
Right. So Jairus is the leader of the synagogue and is considered very in the area, the town. He's responsible and is highly looked upon. He's a leader of the community as well as the leader of the synagogue. Not be unreasonable for him to be around Jesus, but the question was, or I think what brings the story full cycle is for him to humble himself and ask Jesus to do something to heal his daughter, which is not the norm, kind of degrades him, right? So it's as if he's looking for that spot where he can kind of meet Jesus one-on-one. And then what happens is the messenger comes up right after he's healing the woman that's been bleeding and says, unfortunately, your daughter is. And then from that, we get the resurrection of the daughter. And the interesting comparison, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So and it's interesting because we know that person when we see her, and he says no. He says, he touches her and says,
Like about the fact that is once a leader, so he would have had higher expectation of what people would do for him, right? Even in today's society, if you're at a certain socioeconomic level, or if you're the mayor of the town, you expect bigger privileges than just a person, right? He comes to Jesus saying, I need you to heal my daughter. And Jesus stops the for a sinful woman, right? So if you're the leader, what are you thinking as your daughter's laying there dying and Jesus stops for this woman who's a nobody? How many people think that leader at least a little bit, right? And once again, there's a real balance of how Christ treating us as humans, that we're all the same, whether you are that leader of the synagogue or not. But because he gets interrupted, now your bad situation goes to awful, right? My kid went from sick to dead. Once again, I've seen people get healed. I haven't seen people get resurrected. Now it's a scary situation, but he still trusts Christ because right away Christ says to them, don't worry, your daughter's sleeping. Of course, they think he's full of it, but at least he restores. So the anchor in both of those is a little bit of faith, but overwhelmingly it's still that God is in control, even when you don't notice or feel he's necessarily in control.
Another point about the anchor also is that at this point of Jesus,
yeah, he's really good at it. Some people tell, and then everyone tells anyway, because that's just that's basic human nature, right? If I experience something really awesome, I'm going to share it no matter what somebody tells me. So the anchor really started in the first This was also a reminder to them of the service of that they still trusted that Christ was their anchor. Some people's theory around how it changed is Greek for anchors roughly this like having become a high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So there's a lot of reasons why they would stay focused on the anchor. And what we talked about is how symbols help connect us to things that we rarely feel. Feeling God in the midst of my storm right now. In there, you ever been in a place where you're like, I just don't feel like God's presence with me right now? By looking at the anchor was a great way for the Christians to remind themselves, my feelings aren't right? That even if I don't feel like Christ is my anchor right now, I know He is. You can look at the symbol and remind yourself and push yourself to kind of remember, Christ is my anchor. I know when all this is said and done. I know when the are gone, that Christ will be my anchor. I want you to spend time talking about how you can relate to the anchor and how you can use that as a way to help kind of connect you to Christ and to your faith in the midst of some trials and tribulations you might go through. over this evening, this is the time for you to share. Or if there's any questions you have for me about a bigger issue, this is the best time.
Missing last
3-4 minute online about that symbol, and actually, but I like this so much more than that symbol that I switched the weeks.
Prerogative.
That's what I did Sunday. I changed my mind. I figured out how to reset that symbol up there. IHS symbol, and I do leave a 3-minute video, something like that, where I talk about the IHS.
I have one thing I would like to ask. I have a cancer doctor.
We will pray
I'd
for
like
you,
it
sir.
very
There's
much.
a cancer
Pray
note?
that my numbers are all right.
Okay.
So,
So I try to remind people that when you go over, it helps make it true, right? So if you sit there and you start thinking negative thoughts time and time again, to help remind your mind, that's what the anchor symbol should be for you. That reminder to you that in the midst of scares, in the that day when we are left, you and your home. Father, we lift Sue up to you, that you would just keep her healthy and strong, that her appointment with the doctor would go well.